What's up, everybody? This is your boy Marcellus Flores, and this is Comedy and Community. Today's special guest, we have Evan. Your last name's Haynes, right?
Yes, sir.
Haynes, like t-shirts?
It's spelled differently. There's a
Okay.
Y.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Evan Haynes, and the reason I brought you on today, Evan, is because you're doing great things in the community as far as forming this collective called Think Tank. Well, actually, it's called what now?
Stock solid.
Stock Solid. We took
Yep.
a vote on that. My vote was Stockton Thoughts, but then I was like, you know what? We can't be thoughts.
That's raw though.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's relatable,
Yeah.
but so Stockton Solid now is a group name. Tell us something about that, man.
Man. Okay. So Stock Solid started out of basically like a study group that came together of about 35 people from different arts collectives, grassroots organizers, community members, and people that have small businesses that were looking at, okay, how do we create a way for the community to own more resources collectively? You know, how do we build wealth that people that are normally marginalized in this economic system that we have can really build their own wealth by cooperating and working together. And we was looking at some of the different historical movements and things happening in other cities of how people use cooperative businesses, which is just any business, but instead of having one owner, you have the people that work there are worker owners. And what that results in is people having more savings, more investment in that business over time, just on an energetic and personal level, and developing of like their management skills and things like that. And then we was also looking at how can we come together and get a bunch of people together and do things like collectively purchase land so that we can, build our own housing, build our own food supplies and these types of things. And just looking at like, okay, we don't have a lot of. There's a lot of things that the community is facing, like gentrification and the poisoning of the environment and poverty, right? And it felt like there's not a way for us to use a lot of the existing organization that we have to build a long-term solution, because those things aren't resulting in control and ownership by community members. So we're like, in order for us to really have the power to build up our families and solve these things, we have to really have to have the power to own our land and our food and our income sources. So it just came out of that idea, different conversations with people, and then we started building up and developing it into an education project. There's various cooperative businesses that are coming out of that effort in the collective, like a childcare cooperative, an engineering cooperative, arts development cooperative, kind of looking at we're working on different strategies to have, arts events and big cultural events that are putting on all the businesses in the collective and providing avenues to sell. We got some youth and mentors doing a fashion production cooperative. We got amazing artists like yourself, you know what I mean, doing comedy and bringing out people into the space, you know what I mean, and opening people's hearts. We got people that do more like spiritual and cultural and artistic work that's really opening people up and offering an alternative form of healing, and I think the idea is excuse me.
No, it's good.
I think that what we're thinking just as a collective is like, it's people coming together that realize you need a holistic approach to building community. So it's like starting at the artistic and spiritual work that raises people's expectations of what they deserve and allows them to feel whole, and keeping that in the space with, all right, well, what does that mean? That should result in people tangibly owning resources and having control over those things in every area of their life. And I think this kind of thing can sound, it's kind of a rant, but I'm almost done.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, I think this kind of thing can sound like idealistic to a lot of people, but I think that's really the reason it sounds like that is one, the kind of like frame that we get indoctrinated to think of, like, well, that's not possible, like people can't work together, and a lot of them are really just ways of thinking that come from systems of exploitation. You know what I mean? And so I think it's just a thought of like, all right, it really is, this bad. Our families are really, our community is really facing serious issues that will only be solved by us building power long term.
Yeah, no, I think everything that you're doing is pretty righteous, you know.
You
It's
too,
pretty
bro.
awesome. So what made you want to go so deep into this? And I know while you're talking you say we, meaning probably the groups that gather every
Yeah.
other Tuesday.
Yep.
Like we have meetings and stuff, but like what made you want to lead this train to new ways?
Yeah. Well, I'm not the leader for one, man. I just do what I'm good at, which is just gathering people because I really like to meet people, listen to people. I was like, oh, like you do this, that's dope. That fits in perfectly. Like when I met you, I was like, oh, we're doing this, but like comedy is key. It opens people up, brings people out, and allows them to build community in a and know each other, which is like the key thing. So that's just kind of what I do, and I think there's different things that people do in the collective that made it possible for everyone to come together.
Yeah.
All the arts, all the events, like for example, like the River Open Mic, that Jazzy Raja and Bobby and Jasmine were doing. That's energy. That one of our collectives, like a lot of the conversations that led to those meetings, and now to Stock Solid, which is a cooperative of different collectives, that came from conversations in that space, and the kind of the healing that space opened up for people just to really really talk to each other on a real level. But I think what made me want to do that work is just noticing the suffering that's happening with our community. Like I personally came from like a kind of a low income working class background, and was looking for ways like, okay, how do I do something that's positive and benefits my community and like can be sustainable, and I just kind of explored different things and just kind of got to the point where it seemed like all the solutions that people do that, in the community with, say, not to knock anyone, but like I think a lot of the dominant thinking about nonprofits or business development or economic development. I gotta stop smoking.
No, you're good. That's what happens. Yeah. That's what happens when you're passionate.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think a lot of that thinking, it is through a frame that like the developers or whoever has the power to make decisions is better than the people they're trying to serve, and knows better. It doesn't factor in that human beings are human beings. You know what I mean? And that you gotta listen to people and build up with people as equals. You know what I mean? Just like a very family oriented way of thinking. Like how would you treat the people that you love most? And that can sound like in a business context like fluffy or whatever, but I think if you look at movements in history that are most effective at building a base and really getting people involved and bring and just being true, like even knowing what's really going on in a community, you have to be like truly democratic in the raw with the people that you want to build with and the problems that you want to solve. Like if you want to know if you want to create a solution to like the most problematic issues in your community, like you have to take leadership from the people that are most impacted by that issue, which means and there's so many different issues, so it's like you got to make decisions together with people and go through that process of making decisions together, learning together. And then I think that what that results in is everybody needing to learn to be a leader and a manager and an owner and what they do. And so that's just kind of like how it came to me, just kind of like merging what I feel is like spiritually true, like in my heart, like what is really respect for a person, and what does that mean in the dominant like relations that really determine our life outcomes, which is like our economic system, like businesses, what happens with land, with our food, you know what I mean, and then the stories and art. that make those things possible, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, no. So like in 5 years, where do you see Stock Solid?
Man, in 5 years, I see Stock Solid as I see it as a really a big cooperative syndicate of different cooperative businesses of small social enterprises, which is like businesses for a social good. You know, those small businesses in the community don't necessarily have to be a cooperative, but it's about achieving a social mission. You know what I mean, and being financially sustainable, as well as being able to develop our own kind of bank organically through pooling funds and doing things like that. So it's like we can build up money by collectively. We're able to like lend to and invest in our own businesses in the collective. And I see it just being able to really grow and amass a lot of members and be something that's directed and used by the communities where we all are and that we all come from to build up a lot of economic power and new businesses that change people's lives. You know what I mean? And then the same thing with housing and land. You know, I think we already have some small farming businesses and cooperatives that are working out at Boggs Track. There's a chicken farming cooperative that's coming out of Stock Solid as well, like doing eggs and stuff like that. And then also a youth carpentry and trades business that's going to be working with the gardens. We're looking at building tiny houses on a plot of land that we have available right now, which is like, you know, small homes for homeless people. And so I think one of the big things that we'll be able to do is, create a way for us to purchase a lot of land and build housing, food production, and jobs in producing that food. So not just community gardens, you know what I mean, but gardens and farms where the food that's being produced, someone has a job to do that. You know, a system impacted youth has a job to do that, and then the who's buying those products. You know, it's businesses in the collective that are using that to make it into something. So it's like we have our own supply chains. Yeah. And so I think that's the whole idea, is how do you create power that's independent from a system that doesn't want you to exist?
Yeah, no, and that is like a lot of people who are righteous and like want that out of the system, because the system sucks, obviously. It's like everybody knows that, you know, and there's a lot of people doing these type of things. Do you get mentored by anybody who's done this in a different area, or do you like research about people who've done this at a high level already and are at a certain pace? Like who are some people who are actively doing that? Maybe not in this area, but like actively doing that in another city or state that you like, that you research, that you look up to.
Great question. I love this. Yeah. Where I started with, honestly, was I learned about Ella Baker. So I'll just take you back real quick, and then I'll give you some current examples. So I learned about Ella Baker just learning about like the civil rights movement and stuff like that. And I was super interested in her. She's like a less well known civil rights person that, you know, you have like your Martin Luther King, like he's, you know, like hella known legend, but she was the person who worked with all the youth and worked with all the young people, and they went out into all the cities and small towns in the South, and they would knock doors and just listen to people, and they built real relationships with people, and then they brought everyone together in like town halls, different things like that, and their whole thing was like internal democracy. So basically like cooperativism. They would make the decisions together, so that what really ended up happening is like the morale of the people was hella high, and they really built the organizing basis of the civil rights movement and Freedom Summer and things like that. So it's not to say like, oh, the civil rights movement solved everything in every way, but I'm just saying that there was huge victories that came out of that organizing strategy, and it's something that was like less known. So I was like, man, this is very interesting, and it just seemed like intuitively true to me. And then I learned too that when she was younger, she was working in New York to develop cooperative businesses, and like consumer cooperatives where different businesses will come together and buy stuff in bulk, you know what I mean, and just pool their power. And then I was like, man, is there other examples of this? And then started looking at, I learned about Cooperation Jackson, which is a group in Jackson, Mississippi, which is working on building, Cooperation Jackson came out of some of the movements of civil rights workers that tried to build like farming cooperatives and cooperatively owned land in the South. And then actually efforts to establish a new African state throughout the 70s. And they were really successful in building power, but they were heavily attacked by like the FBI and by the government and things like that. And then they built an organization over time called the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, and that resulted in Cooperation Jackson to carry out some of their cooperative development work. And looking at what they're able to do, they kind of had a strategy of, we're going to develop cooperative businesses. We're going to collectively purchase land, and they have like at this point 50 parcels of land. They have a community-based manufacturing hub where they work with university students to design and 3D print different tools to like actually have manufacturing in their communities. And that's crazy because almost all of our manufacturing takes place in overseas. Right now, like there's not much in the United States except for like, you know, weapons and some computers and stuff like that in different places. And that I felt was really cool. And then they also have like, I think like 30 or 40 plots that they're using for what they call an eco village, which is basically they're building affordable housing, urban farms, and then cooperative enterprises that use those farms for jobs. And they just, I think, recently bought another strip mall, and they're using that to like host some of their businesses and stuff like that. So that's a super cool example that I think is really hopeful because it wasn't anybody that had a lot of resources that did it. It was all essentially, you know, working class, poor and working class people, and it was all, you know, like great organizers. Some of the people had a lot of experience, but it's just like kind of showed me like, you know, anyone can take this blueprint and try to do it in their community, which I thought was cool. And also in Mississippi at Jackson, their focus is Jackson is 80% African American. So their focus is Black self-determination through economic democracy. Which means like people collectively owning and deciding resources and wealth. So that's one example. Another example that's really powerful is in Spain. Actually, it's called the Mondragon Cooperatives, and it was started in the 50s by this priest. Was like, well, we don't have any jobs, super high unemployment. He started this. He started a school, a high school, which trained youth and young people how to make and study cooperative enterprises. They ended up the people who graduated the high school started the first cooperative. Now they have over 100 cooperative businesses that do all sorts of manufacturing, like textiles. They have businesses in different countries around the world. They have their own university. They have their own pension system because they make so much money. Wow. They have like $20 billion in revenue each year. And it's just like, it's kind of like the global example of how people can pool resources, and they have the lowest unemployment in Spain, right? And so, and then I would say some other examples that kind of utilize the same thing is the Zapatista movement in Mexico, which actually came out of a revolutionary movement by the one of the groups of indigenous people in Mexico, and started building cooperative farming and cooperative businesses in different ways of basically like having their own autonomy, because the autonomy is like independence,
Okay.
like from the government, because they had been attacked and kind of screwed over on land deals and different things like that. They were basically being robbed consistently for a long time. So different examples like that, and there's a pretty thriving cooperative movement around the world too. Like I think the UN put out a study that was like over 40% of the world's people get their livelihood from cooperatives, and it's just not that well known.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you're the first person I know that's actually forming and putting together a cooperative, like on my line, like come through, come through. We need you. Like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah,
But
bro.
no, it's awesome. Do you have a mentor that like is in your ear on day-to-day basis?
I got a lot of mentors for different things. You know what I
Okay, yeah,
mean?
yeah. Do you?
So I would say I don't know. I consider a lot of people mentors, man. Like yeah. So one of the people I was actually able to talk to Cooperation Jackson and the leaders over there a couple of times,
Oh, really?
and that was
Nice.
that was really it was really cool just to be able to get wisdom and understanding from them about like, all right, how do you do this, or what do
Hmm.
you go about, and what we talked about, the study group, which is what we started with in Stock Solid. He was like, yeah, that's the right way to start. Most of the big cooperatives actually come from a study group because it allows you to build trust and get a collective vision
Hmm.
with the people, and then it's like, this is how you do X, Y, and Z. There's a group in Oakland called Repaired Nations, which is focused on training in cooperative development. It's like, how does money flow through a cooperative? How do you set up like the legal entity and things
Hmm.
like that? And they've been super instrumental in helping us, and actually showed us how to do the legal side of things for the August 3rd event that we're doing for cooperative education. Right, we're doing this popular education
Hmm.
series that's a workshop and an art show, and you're doing comedy for it.
You
So
did.
yeah, yeah. So that's one, and then just like other spiritual mentors, man. Like
Hmm.
I feel like my lady is a huge mentor.
Huge.
She's just on the spiritual tip, and just like wisdom about how to do things, how to stay grounded, how to bring the people together.
Hmm.
um all the folks at the river open mic, Jazzy and Bobby and Jasmine are always keeping me like with the vision about healing and how we integrate everything, man. In music, I feel like my mom, Detroit Goodface, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Always pouring in and being like, this is how you do this. Charles Stewart, he's one of my good friends. He's just a lot of wisdom about business development and organizing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, you know,
Yeah, no, it's
you bro, you always bring the light, So I just think of it like super collectively. You know what I mean? You get a lot of wisdom and life
mhm.
from the people that you're with, and I think it's just more about appreciating that.
Yeah, and
you
it
know.
must be rubbing off well, man, because you're doing great things here in Stockton for the community, for us. You know what I'm saying? Uplifting everybody. It's really appreciative, and I appreciate being a part of it. That being said, this has been an awesome story. Do you want to tell people anything else about your group? How they could join?
Yeah,
Social media? How they could follow the journey? How they could pitch
yeah.
in? Are we doing donations yet, or is that a thing, or no? We're just gonna fucking
I mean,
wait.
people could donate. We not. I wouldn't say not yet.
Mhm.
Probably if you come out on our August 3rd event, that's
Mhm.
gonna be August 3rd at 4 p.m. We're gonna be doing a workshop on basically cooperatives. There's a lot of the positive impact that they've been able to have on communities,
Uh-huh.
just for people to see that this is a proven alternative. It's really impactful, and it's purposefully been repressed and hidden. Because it builds serious power
Yeah.
for people that are um, the dominant, white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist system doesn't want people to have. And the second part of that is how you set up a cooperative business. We can have a dinner, some Cambodian and Aztec dance, an open mic, MF comedy, Sirius P, a great local rapper, Inborn Native, great local hip hop collective, Young Old School, great rapper as well, and a lot a other activities and performances. Equipto from the Bay Area, hip hop legend, he's gonna be headlining.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
What?
So people could come out to that. It's gonna be at 3830 Alvarado Avenue at 4 p.m. on August 3rd. So please
Mark
come
your
out.
calendars.
Yeah, that's a good donation.
Now, speaking of, you also brought up these people don't want us to know about this. So with every push, there's a pull. So eventually down the line, there's gonna be, as we're pushing, there's gonna be a pull. Have you ever hit that pull yet? Like somebody, or is it not that big to where people are like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Just like you're talking about Jacksonville, them, the FBI got involved, things like that. Do you ever think about what that pull is gonna be like?
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, I think that there's different. I think it's when you build power and you have a lot of visibility that you become a targeted threat.
Oh yeah.
So I think that for us that's that's yet to be seen. I think when we get to the point where it's like, all right, we're amassing properties, we're doing this, and we have this radical narrative that's true to the people that are least visible, that's gonna those sorts of attacks would happen. But I mean, history is all shot through with examples of how movements that are really truthful about what dominant systems do and are in solidarity with the people that are suffering, and they build power, what happens to them? You know what I mean? That's just kind of like over and over again.
It's a game of chess, after a certain point, it's like, that's why it's like, while we're doing this, we got to be like, yo, we already got to see this coming, you know what I'm saying? And then that counter behind it. So all that stuff, man. I just want to see if you were ever like thinking like, yeah, their first move is this, like XYZ.
Yeah. We got some people that's thinking about that. You know what I mean? I think, I think that is important, but for sure.
Yeah,
we shouldn't talk about it too much, though.
Yeah, no.
I'm just playing.
It's definitely the nature of the context. I'm just happy and glad to see somebody out here is putting in that work and starting stuff like this to give back to such a community who needs that. So I'm glad to be a part of the show August 3rd. Correct?
Yeah.
Make sure to mark your calendars. I'll be out there telling jokes, healing people from the inside out. Evan, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast today and sharing everybody with your visions, your dreams. It's been awesome.
I got one more thing to say.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah. Okay. Which is, if people do want to get involved, we meet every other Tuesday. And I guess through this, since they would have your contact information, right, from listening to the podcast.
You could give it all right now. You give your number, your all that, like,
okay,
or your email,
Yeah. If you want to get involved, either hit up Marcellus if that's easier for you, or hit me up at it's actually Stock Solid, capital STOCK, capital SOLID at proton PROTON mail.com, like a proton from science class. So you could email us, and please get involved, man. We want to have as many people in the community that want to build power, want to build their own agency, and want to build collective wealth so that we can have a good future.
Thank you so much, Evan. Appreciate you for coming out, man. All right, everybody. This has been Comedy and Community. Peace.